I'm Mina Nutbeam, Program Manager for the CORES program at SAFE, also known as Stewards of Affordable Housing for the Future. If you're less familiar with us, CORES is a certification that recognizes owner-operators and third parties that have developed a robust commitment, capacity, and competency in providing resident services coordination in affordable rental homes. So in today's webinar, we'll be exploring ways that organizations can leverage the CORES certification and other frameworks and tools to demonstrate the outcomes of their resident services, access funding opportunities, and communicate impact to investors. Next slide, please. So we are going to just go over some quick logistical items before we get started today. Again, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat or share resources that you may have to offer. Today's recording and slides will be made available to folks afterwards that have registered, so both those in attendance and those that weren't able to join that are registered. Any resources that we mentioned today, we'll try to share after today's webinar and follow up. And if you do have any questions for me or panelists today, please make sure to use the Q&A function. Next slide, please. So today we want to discuss the growing space of ESG and impact investing and how investors are partnering with organizations to understand the impact and social return on their investments. Affordable rental housing really sits in a unique space in the impact investing ecosystem with an ability to drive meaningful outcomes for residents. We think that resident services is just one piece of this puzzle. Can you go back? Sorry. And way that organizations like yours can demonstrate the impact of this funding support. So we know that quality resident services really supports improved resident stability and well-being and can also have an impact on the financial success of properties through improved resident satisfaction, housing stability, relationship building, brand building, and reputation. So as part of understanding these connections, we've engaged our partners to map the connections between CORES and other frameworks and tools leveraged by investors to identify organizations with the capacity to drive resident outcomes, as well as positive financial and social impact. So today we're going to be exploring these frameworks and how CORES certified organizations may be attractive to this community of investors given their commitment to quality and resident outcomes. Next slide, please. So before diving in further into the impact investing space, we just wanted to touch on some of the broader benefits of CORES in the broader landscape. CORES really opens access to a number of funding opportunities for partnerships, funding and financing, including Fannie Mae's Healthy Housing Rewards, Enhanced Resident Services Program, and CORES has also been incorporated into a number of state LIHTC qualified allocation plans. Funders and investors can really be using CORES to inform their funding commitments. CORES certification is also a signal that an organization has the highest level of commitment to industry best practices, and it serves as an external validation of the quality and systems approach to these services. We also offer the opportunity for organizations to engage with like-minded peers with a similar dedication and commitment to resident services. This includes participating in the CORES annual convening that we host, which focuses on a lot of best practices and innovative approaches that organizations are taking towards resident services and outcomes. And finally, CORES helps organizations both develop and demonstrate their commitment to tracking and understanding the impact of their resident services. So this really includes evaluating resident outcomes and using this information to adjust programs and services to further deepen their impact. Next slide, please. So for those less familiar, what is impact investing? Impact investing is really investment by funders with the goal of achieving certain impact goals while generating financial returns. So this can include environmental, social, and other forms of impact. Investment in affordable rental housing specifically can drive meaningful social and environmental outcomes while also creating and preserving a stable, high-demand asset. So there are a number of tools and frameworks that have been developed and adopted in the US and internationally that lay out targets or principles that have been incorporated into impact investing. And we've really seen growing interest in resident services specifically as one way of understanding and demonstrating social impact. Next slide, please. As part of this, We really wanted to better understand and map out how cores and the capacities that are recognized through the program are aligned with some of the existing impact investing frameworks. So to do this, SAFE analyzed 10 impact investing tools for alignment with the core certification and identified strong alignment with the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, the Multifamily Impact Framework, and GRESB. The SDG, Multifamily Impact Framework, and GRESB are all tools that are used by a growing community of impact investors that are focused on real estate and housing. So core certified organizations may be attractive to this community of investors given their commitment to quality and resident outcomes. Awareness of these tools by you all and the tools that are favored by different types of funders can really be helpful in developing partnerships, seeking investment, and expanding the use of operating best practices. And we have a link to that analysis that we did on this page, which we'll make sure you all have access to as well after the webinar. Next slide. So here is just a very quick overview of these three frameworks that I mentioned, where we found strong alignment with cores. The first one being the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, which was launched by the United Nations Conference on Sustainable Development and includes 17 global goals to address the environmental, political, and economic challenges within specific thematic areas like health and well-being, quality education, partnerships, hunger, poverty. The SDGs are the most widely referenced impact tool or framework and are used by businesses, public entities, investors, nonprofits, and individuals. The second framework is the Multifamily Impact Framework, which was launched by the Multifamily Impact Council to increase flow of capital to create affordable, sustainable rental housing. So it is organized into different impact principles, which we'll talk a bit more about, one of which is resident engagement, which CORES closely aligns to as well. Again, we'll dive deeper into this with one of our panelists today. And then the last framework to mention is GRESB. GRESB is an annual assessment tool founded in the Netherlands and now referenced internationally, really designed to increase transparency for investors and provide operational guidance for real estate fund managers. So it's really evaluating those environmental, social, and governance performance metrics in real estate portfolios. Next slide, please. As we've shared, investors are relying on participation in external processes such as CORES and these other evaluation frameworks to inform their funding and to identify mission-aligned affordable housing organizations. So course certification and other frameworks can really help communicate that your organization is outcomes driven with a focus on continuing to improve your resident services and program performance. This includes using community data and resident feedback to help inform your program priorities and understand resident satisfaction with services. And these frameworks also look to see that organizations have the capacity to identify quality partnerships with a shared vision and commitment to resident outcomes and impact. And the leading impact frameworks are built to enhance stakeholder outcomes, often connected to resident outcomes like health, like economic mobility, and quality of life. Again, frameworks like CORES can demonstrate to investors that your organization really has the competency and capacity to develop programs that can lead to improved resident outcomes. And with that in mind, we'd like to have a conversation today with organizations that are thinking about how to communicate their impact to investors and to funding partners. So to kick us off, we're first going to hear from Rachel, who is at the Multifamily Impact Council. Rachel Mavrothalasites serves as Chief Operating Officer for the Multifamily Impact Council, which is a national nonprofit membership organization of diverse stakeholders committed to creating, preserving, and supporting affordable, sustainable multifamily rental housing in the U.S. In this capacity, Rachel really supports the evolution and adoption of the Multifamily Impact Framework, one of the frameworks strongly aligned with CORES, and furthers MIC's contributions to the multifamily industry. So Rachel is going to offer some insights into the Multifamily Impact Framework, its alignment with CORES, and how impact investors are considering resident services and the opportunity for affordable housing providers. So welcome, Rachel.
Thank you so much, Mina. It is an honor to be here with you all today and to see so many of our members, both as panelists here and also in the chat. So, good morning to you all. So, as Mina mentioned, I'm just going to do a quick overview of who the Multifamily Impact Council is and what the Multifamily Impact Framework is before talking about how we have really been the beneficiaries of all of the work that SAFE has done around resident engagement to really codify and define what makes high quality practice. So if we can go ahead to the next slide here. This probably goes without saying for everyone on this call, but I like to start the conversation around why the Multifamily Impact Council came to be with this fact. People spend more time in their homes than anywhere else. And for 40 million Americans, that home is an apartment building. So when we think about, as Mina mentioned, that demand, that scale and opportunity for impact that comes along with investing in affordable housing, this is really a unique asset class where we can deliver and meet a lot of need in a relatively stable and sort of predictable way. It's not as peaky or kind of high risk, high reward as other impact asset classes, such as health tech or ed tech, for example. And so this demand makes multifamily properties a perfect asset class for impact investors seeking long-term investments with stable cash flow while improving lives. And so when we think about the importance of our work, and it's so easy to get into the weeds of what we're doing day to day, it's really helpful for me at least to zoom out and remember what it is that we're all striving for. So if we go on to the next slide, I'll go through just these three big buckets of work that we at the Multifamily Impact Council undertake. First and foremost is maintaining an impact investing industry standard via the Multifamily Impact Framework. Our framework has 7 impact principles, of which resident engagement is one very critical. And within each of those principles, we set definitional terms. We define what a minimum impact threshold is, so that minimum bar that all of our members and framework adopters agree to uphold. And then we set reporting guidelines, all with this objective of promoting transparency. If we look back at the history of impact investing over, let's call it the last 15 to 20 years, but really impact investing goes back quite a bit further than that. One of the key challenges has been agreement around common terms and definitions that the whole industry can rely on to say, okay, this is quality, this is what they mean when they say that level of impact or outcome. And so by helping promote transparency and that agreement around terms, we actually support this goal of increasing the global flow of capital to impactful, affordable multifamily rental housing in the US. We know that investors are not going to put their money in something that they can't measure and understand. And so by bringing those measurements to the table, we're actually helping increase that global capital flow, which is one of our primary objectives. Thank you. The other really important piece of work that we know that we seek to fulfill is to build relationships across the industry. So we have over 80 organizations now who are within the council and helping maintain the framework year on year. And through those connections, we build relationships across professionals to access research, share best practice, and grow the impact investing capacity of their staff and their teams. And with that sort of capacity increase, this is something that SAFE speaks to often as well. We recognize that not only does an organization sort of elevate and expand what they do for their resident base, but the entire industry starts to tick upwards, and kind of we see this rising tide raising all ships, so to speak. Through those industry relationships, we recognize that builds exposure, builds awareness to this asset class. And so we use that platform to educate and to build support across the broader commercial real estate industry. Nearly 500 organizations, thank you. Nearly 500 organizations at this point have downloaded the framework. The framework is free to use, and that is very important to us, that it is an open source resource. And more than 5,000 individuals subscribe to our newsletter. So that newsletter can be found on Substack, on LinkedIn, on our website, and is a really timely source to talk about kind of capacity restraints and things happening in the multifamily industry as a whole. And then the last piece of work that we undertake is we drive industry relevant research and thoughtful partnerships to increase portfolio allocation to the sector as a whole. So there's two mechanisms by which we're doing that today, though, there's been other iterations of this in the past. In 2024, we launched the Multifamily Impact Council Research Fund, which is a sister organization to the council itself, which was created to support initiatives that quantify how impact-driven multifamily investments can deliver financial returns and reduce risk while generating positive social and environmental outcomes. We have three studies coming forth that we're really excited about. One in partnership with SAFE, another with NYU Stern's Business School, adopting their return on sustainable investment model to the multifamily impact framework and featuring a few key case studies there. And then a series of sort of Harvard Business School style case studies focusing on specific impact principles and the strategic decision making that was required in bringing them to market, and what the financial impact was. That's in partnership with the University of Wisconsin. So those should all be coming out in the next year or so. And then last year, we launched the LP affiliate membership program. So LP is for limited partners. That's specifically to engage with institutional investors to help them gain increased exposure, access, and influence within the network, because we recognize that their voice is so, so critical to how the framework continues to evolve and what subsequent sort of ancillary tools we put next to the framework to help adoption of that tool. So I've mentioned the framework a lot. What is the framework? So the framework is centered around 7 key principles. And I think one of the things that I really love about how it is set up is this is not hierarchical. All of the 7 impact principles are set equal to one another, and we know that they work in tandem to deliver financial return for portfolios. However, we start with affordability because that builds the bounds around what we're talking about, right? What's in group for this asset class versus out group. And for us, the way we define affordability is that 50% of the units in that site or in that portfolio are affordable to households earning 80% of AMI. Many of the folks on this call will exceed that 50% threshold. We wanted to keep sort of this combination of both naturally occurring affordable housing and LIHTC and government subsidized affordable housing in the conversation, because there's really key pieces of work that can be learned from both. And then we go straight to resident engagement because we recognize that that is that product market fit, right? How you understand your customer, who is your resident, determines how successful that portfolio is going to be. And the composition of that resident engagement plan, as is true for how CORES establishes their work as well, is very specific to the residents at that site. And so what programs around housing stability, economic health and mobility, health and wellness, et cetera, fall into that resident engagement plan all flow from the process and that sort of structure that you put in that plan, in that resident engagement point. So we can head to the next slide here. The other thing that I wanted to mention about the framework is that we maintain an annual framework enhancement process. And so our members really guide and make sure that the principles and the metrics are staying relevant to the market. What we've seen over the last 3 years that the framework has been in circulation, we are in our 3rd year now, so we'll be coming out with Framework 3.0 in a few weeks, actually, is there have been a few big changes, not many. Most have been really focused on how do we support implementation? What tools can we put alongside this to help people put these principles and practices into motion for their residents and for their assets? So when we talk about resident engagement, as I said, we define resident engagement as that approach that ensures the services and programs being provided are consistent with the resident priorities, needs, and goals that are stated. This is not ivory tower, sort of what we assume folks want. This is actually based on what folks say and demonstrate that they need and want. That it leverages community resources. This is such a key point, right? What is it is only resource diminishing if we try to do something that already exists in our community, right? If there's a resource there, let's leverage it and let's make sure that we're connecting our residents to it whenever we can, and that we're building trust with residents. Relationships, policies, programs, et cetera, live and die with trust. And so while this one is maybe the hardest to operationalize, it is also possibly the most critical. So this is the definition of how we're thinking about resident engagement. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see here what we mean by the minimum resident threshold. So corporate impact plans and investment strategies should ensure that property or owners are incorporating a resident engagement approach that is either core certified. We recognize that core certification is best in class. And so if you're already core certified, all done. Or if you are not yet core certified, that includes the following: communication and feedback loops to measure renter satisfaction, program outcomes, and identify those resident needs and priorities, a process to identify and leverage community resources, and initiatives that enhance information sharing and communication between renters and on-site staff. This is where we're sort of operationalizing trust. This is sort of, while we recognize this isn't the only way, open communication lines typically are a good indicator of what trust might look like on site. So just this last page here, what you'll see is, as I mentioned, one of the ways that we've tried to help operationalize that. This is a checklist that exists in the framework to help you kind of think through, okay, have I taken the steps needed to build out a really solid resident engagement platform? Again, CORES is named first and foremost because we know that the core certification really activates everything that might be needed to build a strong resident engagement platform. And then again, as I mentioned, you'll see the subsequent impact principles here, which programs around housing stability, economic health and mobility, health and wellness, et cetera, might you be offering? And then there's place to include all of those which are specific to your residents at your sites. So I'll pause here and turn it over to our other panelists. I think the last kind of comment I would make, and I've included my information on the next slide here if you want to reach out, is that what we've seen in the growth of the impact investing sort of focus on affordable housing from impact investors is that resident engagement is becoming table stakes. People expect it. Uh, and it makes sense, right? As we already said, you have to understand your residents, your customer, in order to deliver for them and deliver for your investors. But what we're still seeing, and makes a lot of sense, is that impact investors are looking to operators to tell them what is quality resident services, and looking to this industry to say, okay, what is best practice, what is subpar, and while their questions and their sort of pressure to do more is increasing and becoming increasingly sophisticated. At the end of the day, it is up to the operator community to continue to define what that is and be really transparent and clear about how they're delivering for their resident base. So I'm really interested to hear what our panelists have to say about that, and if that is consistent with what they're seeing as well. But that is what we've found on our side.
Thanks, Rachel.
Thank you,
And as
Nina.
you said, we're now going to move into a panel discussion, both with Rachel and joined by panelists from two core certified organizations, Avanath and L&M Development Partners. So this is going to include a conversation on how these organizations are making the connections between their resident services, impact, and investor partnerships. So next slide, please. So in addition to Rachel joining us today, we have Kenesha Washington, the Director of Resident Services at Avanath Capital Management, who has over a decade of experience designing and implementing resident-focused programs in affordable and workforce housing. She leads Avanath's social impact initiatives, leveraging community engagement and strategic partnerships to create measurable impact across Avanath communities nationwide. We also have Dara Patel, Director of Investor Relations at Avanath Capital Management, with over 5 years of experience in real estate investment and capital raising. Dara focuses on affordable and workforce housing. She brings a unique perspective on how institutional capital can be leveraged to create meaningful impact. And then from L&M, we have Christina Fibkins, Community Investment Manager. As a manager on the Community Investment team, Christina supports philanthropic and community investment initiatives that support residents of affordable housing and coordinates ESG and impact reporting for L&M. Christina has over 5 years of experience working with nonprofit and community development organizations. And then last but not least, we have Jinji Pika, Senior Director of Community Investment, who leads L&M Development Partners, philanthropic and community investment initiatives that support residents and communities surrounding L&M's affordable properties in both New York and New Jersey. Jinji has over 20 years of experience working with community-based organizations and implementing research and evaluation projects. Much of her work has focused on underserved populations, including populations of color, adolescents, seniors, and veterans. So with that, I'd like to welcome you all and start off this conversation by asking if you can each please tell us a little bit both about your background and your organization's commitment to resident services. So let's start over at Avanath. I think you have a few slides to talk about this as well.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. I'm Dara Patel, Director of Investor Relations at Avanath Capital Management. Avanath is a vertically integrated real estate firm with a mission-driven approach focused exclusively on preserving and enhancing affordable and workforce housing, excuse me, across the United States. Today, Avanath manages approximately 4 billion assets under AUM, in AUM and owns and operates more than 15,000 units across 16 states. One of our competitive advantages is our deep expertise in navigating the complex regulatory landscape. We have long-standing relationships with over 64 state and local housing agencies and other key players in the industry that help us preserve long-term affordability while delivering strong risk-adjusted returns. Our investors vary from pension funds, insurance companies, foundations, endowments, high net worth clients, impact investors, and so many more. Our commitment to ESG is both authentic and measurable. We've received top tier GRES scores, and nearly 80% of our team is diverse. And that diversity is reflected across our leadership, operations, our resident base, and really everyone that is encompasses within Avanath. We see resident services as a value driver, improving retention, property performance, and ultimately investment returns. And we're so proud to be a firm that delivers both on mission and margin. I'm excited to hand it off to my colleague and friend, Kenesha Washington, to share more about how we're leveraging impact to create scalable, sustainable solutions in the affordable space. Kenesha, take it away.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And just want to take some time to say thank you to CORES and the Source of Affordable Housing for allowing Avanath to be on this panel today. I also just wanted to mention that we are a founding member of the Multifamily Impact Council, and as Mina's mentioned, so excited to be core certified as of 2023. Avanath's mission is rooted in a basic slogan of lifestyle within reach. We believe in not only providing affordable, safe housing for our residents, but also coupling our housing with programs and services that meet the needs of the residents that are living at all of our communities. And so the resident services framework that we have, which is called Activate, it is a pillar of our ESG strategy, and specifically as it relates to social responsibility and social impact. Our ESG strategy is called Amplify, and it focuses on not only addressing, like I mentioned, housing prices through affordable housing, but also the social, emotional, physical, and the economic needs of our residents so that they can go after the desired lifestyle that they wish to achieve. Our service areas that you see here on the slide, they are guided by our market analysis that we're conducting during acquisitions, and every 3 years, we are making sure that we are updating our resident needs assessments to really understand the needs of our residents, and the service areas are strategic based on what those needs assessments and markets are saying that we should be providing to our residents. And that is youth enrichment, community engagement, health and wellness, and personal professional development. And then lastly, I would just say our commitment is also tied to the investments that we have internally with the hiring of our service coordinators, as well as through contracted third-party service providers that are providing programs and services across all of our communities in our portfolio. And then lastly, like I mentioned, and it's been expressed already, we want to make sure that the programs and services that we are offering are guided on tried and true, trusted industry benchmarks and standards that we are continuously using to enhance our framework, and that is GRESB, cores, and we are also working on developing more principles that fall within the multifamily impact framework principles that Rachel mentioned earlier. And just want to give I guess, a nugget to take advantage of the checklist that was shared by Rachel. That's been a game changer for us, and really identifying some of the programs and services that we should be offering as well that's aligned with those needs assessments. And ultimately want to see some of the outcomes that you see on this slide. We want to make sure that we're addressing barriers to stability and opportunity for our residents, and that our residents are satisfied at our communities so that it produces better financial performance for the communities that we have in our portfolio. And that is it for me. Thank you so much, Mina.
Thank you. I'll pass it over to L&M with the same question.
Sure. Thanks for the introduction earlier, Mina, and for having us today. We were going to share just a little bit about L&M and who we are and our approach to resident services and how we collaborate with investors. So founded in 1984, L&M Development Partners is an impact-driven, vertically integrated developer, builder, and manager of multifamily, mixed-use, and affordable housing. Our company mission is working together to build stronger communities, and we have a double bottom line philosophy, which means that we measure our success not only in financial returns, but also by the positive impacts that we make in the communities that we build and serve. So resident services is a pretty critical component. We manage more than 23,000 units, and with our affiliate companies are responsible for approximately $20 billion in development investment, and combined have over 57,000 high-quality residential units in construction or that have been acquired, preserved, or completed. Next slide, please. Sorry. Is provided in collaboration with 5 key teams at the company. That includes our property managers, social services teams, our third-party operators and nonprofits, our community investment team, and our community affairs team. So just in brief, our property management and social services teams work to conduct outreach with our residents, particularly those that are in need or in arrears. We do that with a variety of methods, in-person, door drops, phone appointments, home visits, you name it. Our social services team is largely related to our own ongoing case management, referrals for physical and mental health services, financial support, eviction prevention, benefits provision. We also organize a variety of property-based events and activities at our sites and provide supervision of our third-party operators. Our third-party operators and community partners are nonprofit organizations that also support with social services and case management. They also provide supportive housing services, support our events, and work with us to assess our residents in terms of needs assessments and ongoing reporting. They also help collaborate with our resident leaders and with the other teams at the property. Our community investment team, where Christina and I sit, are engaged in our ESG reporting, impact reporting, and data collection. We also implement a grant-making program to help support and provide robust resident services and programs in the community, but also directly at our properties. And we also support other local events and activities, mostly in partnership with our nonprofit organizations. And then lastly, our community affairs teams helps to implement other resident activities and events, really address quality of life issues, engage with our resident leaders across our portfolios, as well as our community stakeholders to ensure that we are meeting resident needs that are communicated beyond just to our direct staff, and work with our local electeds and local governments as well. So I'll pass it on to Chris.
Mina, this one was for the next question. Do you want us to jump into this one
Yeah,
now?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, my follow-up to that was really how you all have partnered with impact investors and how you're leveraging resident services to really build and foster on those relationships. So I think this would be great to kick us off here.
Yeah, definitely. So when we're thinking about collaborating with impact investors or with different public agencies and nonprofits and private investors who are really interested in our social impact strategy, which largely involves our resident engagement and resident services strategy, some of the main ways we see this is through ESG surveys or investor surveys, which we respond to quite frequently. So they will ask for different social data components, including resident engagement, housing stability, resident health and wellness, and resident economic mobility. So as Gingy mentioned, as part of the community investment team, we kind of collect and synthesize this data and then share it back with the investors. We also make ourselves available to provide feedback. So we might participate in a lender survey or a questionnaire to share really how we would answer these questions or what data that we are collecting, really sharing our experiences to help shape the way that they're asking for this information and these questions. We've also been fortunate to participate in the multifamily impact feedback session, some sessions with cores as well. So really just sharing our experiences there. And then lastly, we participate in industry networks to support our impact investor relations and to align with industry best practices and to learn from our peers as well. So we're a member of the Multifamily Impact Council. We received our core certification in 2004, which really helps us share externally our commitment to resident services and potentially unlock opportunities for funding for resident services. And then in 2024 and again in 2025, we were named a Freddie Mac Impact sponsor, which also just helps us share externally our commitment to resident services as well.
Thanks. And yeah, Avanath team, same question to you. And I think Jessica, who's helping with those slides, we can stop sharing for now and just open up to the discussion with the group. Similar question on how you've partnered with impact investors. Anything else you'd like to share on how you're leveraging resident services to build and foster these relationships?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, we work, honestly, so many of my responses are almost identical to what Christina said. We work very closely with a variety of investors, and a big portion of those investors are impact investors. We get some investors that come with us with very specific missions in mind, and our impact investors come in that same way. Their primary goal is to allocate their capital in a way that's meaningful and can improve the lives of the communities that they are investing in. And so for this group, resident services is a key platform and a key differentiator. They want to see real and tangible outcomes, whether it's after school programs, food security initiatives, financial literacy, or really whatever the community needs. We like to say that we've been doing ESG before it's cool. You know, it's part of our mission. It's just a part of the way Avanath operates. But now investors are really looking for that data and for those services to be tracked and for them to be monitored. And so now that's really what we're focusing on. So now we're, collecting the data and we're providing the stories that bring all that impact to life. Kanisha, anything to add? Oh, you're muted.
I guess just to kind of elaborate a little bit, it's just that we want to make sure that resident services is being used as a tangible demonstration of our commitment to social impact and social responsibility. So as Dar was mentioning, really making sure that we have the data behind the programs and services that are showing the social return, but also the financial return indirectly, sometimes through the financial literacy programs and the resident satisfaction, resident engagement initiatives that we have that help with retention, things like that. So that's the only thing that I would add to the conversation, and just making sure we're providing opportunities for our investors to see our impact in real life. So we're always conducting investor tours, so that our investors are on the grounds and witnessing our social impact in real life.
Great. So you've both talked about, all of you have talked about how your teams are really sharing that data back with investors. I'm just curious if you can speak to how your teams are collaborating, both internally and across departments, to collect and share this information with your partners. You all sit in different types of roles, and what strategies have really helped you to better communicate this impact as a team and coordinate that sharing of impact information?
We can start here. So for our team and the community investment team, again, we kind of work to collect the data internally and collaborate across our different departments. So that's from our social services, our property management team, community affairs, all those teams that Gingy mentioned earlier that are really leading our resident services work. So what we do is we started tracking data quarterly from these different teams. So we started by kind of interviewing the different team leads and department heads and seeing what data they were already collecting, what they were interested in collecting to figure out what made sense for us. Also looking at, the information that's important to cores, the information that's important to the Multifamily Impact Council, and seeing what we should track from there. So we do that now on a quarterly basis. Everything is shared within a centralized Excel data sheet that's shared. This way you can see everyone else's information. We ask them to also put like quarterly highlights in there as well to support with their impact reporting. And then all of that feeds into a Power BI dashboard, which is something we're really excited about because it's something newer to us. And it's just really easy to share then internally across different departments, to share with our team leads, to share externally if needed. And then we've developed processes, of course, for that data collection, how to respond to any information request externally from our investors as well. So it's kind of figuring out that data and then figuring out the processes as well to share that information.
And I guess what I would just add to this question is we are engaging with multiple departments to make sure that the data that is needed from these different departments are unified and that we are clear as to what that data should look like. That data is flowing through different tools like Yardi, Retech. We have a proprietary reporting tool that we're using for tracking our resident services. We also are using Tableau and SurveyMonkey to track some of our resident service metrics. That information is synthesized and validated through multiple touch points to make sure that the data is accurate. And we're also just wanting to make sure that everyone understands the importance of why the data matters from the different stakeholders that we have. So as Christina mentioned, what the investors might need might be different from what our property operations may need or what GRES might need. And so just making sure that our communities and our different department leads understand why the data matters from those different viewpoints. I'm not sure if they are having to add.
Yeah, I'm sure L&M can agree to this, but when you work in a vertically integrated company, there's a lot of collaboration and a lot of cross collaboration that happens within a company because it's all in-house. And so, like Kenesha was saying, when she does collect the data from community managers, right, they're collecting it in the lens that they see it, and she gives it to us, and us being the whole company, and different departments will look at that data, whether that's the FP&A lens that looks at it to figure out exactly the best way to present it to investors and internally. And then I can look at it from an investor relations lens and figure out if that's the exact question that answers what investors are asking for. And then, and whether that's the asset management and the investments team, whether they're looking at it at a lens for future acquisitions and how current operations are going. So really across the entire department, one set of data gets looked at, in a dozen different ways, only to be shared and reported on in one cohesive way that really matches what Avanath's mission is and what our goal is at the end of the day, because everyone at Avanath really has bought into the whole mission of providing lifestyles within reach. And so when we all keep that mission like at the forefront of our minds, while we're all looking at it through our own lens within our department, the mission and the end goal is all the same. So the data changes just enough to for each department, but is still exactly what Avanath wants to share across the company.
Thank you. Yeah, it seems like really really key and important here is that cross communication across teams and across departments. And I think we have a follow-up question to that in the chat on sort of what key drivers can be deployed to help, I think, both property management and resident services staff embrace and understand the value of this program and sharing this information. Um, is there something that you feel like some key tangibles folks can take as far as communicating that value and sharing across departments and that communication piece, I think, across the teams to embrace and understand the value of this work?
I don't mind taking this one first. I think what really hit home to me after about a year or two of working at Avanath, and really understanding the mission and what it is that Avanath does. I joined Avanath as a fund accountant, so in a completely different role that I am in now. So I have multiple perspectives that I think about when I'm in this position. But is that everybody within the company, everybody that you know knows someone else that could probably benefit from affordable housing. We're, and that in and of itself makes the mission so much more personal, and it makes the mission so much more like hits home, and you're really sold on it, right? Because you know that, like let's say like my aunt could really use affordable housing. And so for me, it's like, well, someone else's aunt that they love could also use affordable housing. And so that makes everyone just work just like a little bit harder. And I think that whole tone is really consistent, whether it's from, our Daryl and our CEO, all the way down to our community managers and our leasing assistants, and really across the entire company. The tone across Avanath is very much the same. When you know someone that can, benefit from it, it makes you work a little bit harder for it. It's nice that we're such a big company and that we've come so far, but we're not so big that we're not removed from the impact that we have on a regular basis, whether that comes from a property tour, meeting residents, whether you're an investor on the acquisitions team, on the investor relations team, on the property management team. You have a point at some point where you touch base with the resident and you see the direct impact that you're having there, and then you see the direct impact that you're having to investors with proper stable returns. And so for me, it really is full circle, and for so many people.
I think I was trying to change.
No,
I was going
go
to say similar to Dara's response. I think, having our mission and values to really guide us and all working towards that shared common goal is super, super helpful. But I think also sharing it back, like across those teams, like being very transparent with the data and sharing it back even with residents, really helps to keep everyone aligned and on track, and that transparency there. Gingy, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I was going to agree. I think the ESG is an opportunity to reinforce to everyone in the community how everyone plays a part and is involved in helping us meet our social impact goals. So I think it's sharing the information back. I think it's encouraging all of the teams to provide sort of how this is actionable in their work. So to share their own stories across, from our builders team to property management to like everyone who touches residents and is part of building a building. I think reinforcing that they are part of ESG and they're contributing and helping us respond to those goals. We've also sort of helped and reinforced, whether it's on a town hall or on intranet stories, just like how the progress that we're making on sort of like our commitment to these goals. So I think everyone feels more invested.
Nina, could I add to that?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think so many of these, if I just speak for our own framework, we've already described, right? The goal is to increase global capital flow. So it's built with sort of this investor focused lens. But by having something that is tangible that can be handed off, that actually can be provided to on-site teams. And I think where we've seen members sharing back, hey, team at X property, you helped us get our GRES score. Like this property had the biggest increase in water or energy, or if in the state, if we're talking about resident services, resident engagement. It can be really, so often on-site teams are just asked to do more and never really getting to see how that rolls up. And so I think helping folks feel like they're a part of those big wins is really powerful. And, when I've seen investor relations teams share, hey, your work really resonated with this one investor, thank you, that can be really powerful. So that's just one thing we've seen from our side.
Definitely. I love that. One other question we had and sort of connects to this, we've seen, a growing number of organizations are really trying to make the case that resident services can improve your property's financial performance in addition to housing stability. So have you explored this topic further, and how are you thinking about making this case to investors? This tied to someone else's question, I think, about looking at the data around ROI for the case of, or when it comes to resident services.
Well, we do know that there is a positive correlation between resident services and asset preservation and financial management, particularly as you think about the ways that resident services is helpful for resident retention. For example, your eviction prevention programs or your financial coaching in partnership with different financial institutions and things like that to provide counseling to those residents, that correlates to just higher resident retention and occupancy and things like that. I think for me, I think the for Avanath, the conversation is more so making sure that we are engaging in opportunities for us to hand over our data to like analyze, like what impact does that have in terms of that ROI. There's ways for us to offer those programs and services, but making sure that we're focusing on the needs of the residents, but also what is the benefit to that bottom line. I think we do a good job of showing the social return, but we're still gathering data, and for us, we are still gathering that data to determine what actually is that return to different metrics, whether it's retention or occupancy or maintenance costs and things like that. So we're still looking into that, and that's still a question that we are trying to answer for our company for sure.
I think we're in a similar position. We haven't really finished it. I think looking at, certainly properties that have eviction prevention programs or other financial literacy programs, looking at property arrears, looking at, potential eviction rates, looking at other proxies for economic stability. Is there a correlation with folks who are feeling safer in these communities, what their level of participation in these programs are? I think it's something that has to be measured in a longer term. So on either, I think we're beginning to collect information on a quarterly basis, but I think we need a little bit more time looking annually if you've had a program, how that might be able to affect the arrears of the property, or even sort of the service requests, assuming that those things would potentially go down over time if you're providing a robust resident services program.
Great. And I wanted to ask, what trends have you all noticed in the field and when talking to partners and impact investors when it comes to their interest in understanding the impact of resident services?
I think one of the big interests that we've seen and trends that we've seen specifically is people asking for a quantitative return on the data that we've been collecting for so long. And often we'll even, similar to what Christina said, is we'll get surveys that aren't necessarily questions on what we're doing, but a survey with 200 questions saying, hey, this is something we may send out to our other investors. Would you answer any of these questions? Because you've been doing ESG for so long, because you've been doing resident services and all the stuff for so long. Here's a question, here's a bank of 200 questions that we think operators and owners should be able to answer. Can you actually answer it? Because they're just coming from the investor side, just like a brain dump. And we appreciate that because we can look at that and be like, okay, so this is the thought process that somebody has. Not to say that we can answer all 200 of those questions, but then we can start to cater our resident services and the way we do our reporting and the way we, our annual ESG reports or our quarterly reports to our investors. We can use those different data banks and those questions and those different surveys that we participate in to kind of guide and kind of cater and change it, not to change our mission at all or what our ultimate goal is, but to make it more, digestible for who is actually getting this data back and like using it.
And I just would just add, I think, wanting to make sure that like companies like ours, firms like ours can be validated through those trusted, frameworks, and that we are who we say we are, that we are using industry, benchmarks for how we decide, what our framework is going to look like for our company. I know that that's been very helpful for us as we are going out and seeking and maintaining the investors that we have. So going after those certifications and understanding other principles and benchmarks for income and measurable outcomes is a way for us to show our commitment to resident services.
Yeah, we definitely agree with everything that Dara and Kanisha said. I think we're seeing similar things. We've also definitely seen an increase in asking about like the funding for resident services, like how are you funding them? How are you scaling resident services? Like which properties have them? Do you do it at your entire portfolio? These sort of questions. Also, which resident services are offered at which sites in your portfolio? And then in terms of trend, I think Kanisha was speaking to this as well, but really looking to like the different organizations and certifications for guidance, which has been incredibly helpful. Like I know for the Multifamily Impact Council, right? Like CORS is the threshold to meet the resident services requirement. And then when we were applying for the Freddie Mac impact sponsorship, that was asking for multifamily impact aligned questions as well. So kind of having these different certifications as a guiding place is really, really helpful as well.
Absolutely. It definitely seems like there is that increasing integration across the industry, which is so critical and hopefully eases reporting burden and increases efficiency for everyone. But I also think there's been this shift from starting with narrative and allowing story to kind of shape how you're evaluating resident services and impact platforms, to using story to support overarching data and kind of starting from quantitative and then filling in with qualitative has seemed to be a really important shift for the industry as a whole.
I think also just a shift from outputs to outcomes and really trying to figure out how you're assessing and measuring those, which is still emerging. But I think there's previously there was more of a lean in the environmental and sustainability space, relying there for quantitative data, and now really looking to see more about the outcomes in social and residential work.
Great. Well, thank you all so much. I know we're at time. Just wanted to reshare some additional resources CORS offers, our resource library, newsletter, webinar, other webinars, which we share through our newsletter and on our social channels. I'll also put those links in the chat for folks. And thank you so much to our panelists for joining this discussion. I know we didn't get to everyone's question. We will try to follow up to see if there are any additional insights on those. But again, we will be sharing out slides as well as the webinar recording with folks too. Thank you all so much for joining us and having this great conversation.